Hello viewers, and welcome to yet another live-action commentated match of Warhammer 40,000 Conquest. My name is Mitch, and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today, I'm pleased to present a game from our 2015 Nordic National Championship. On the left sits a gentleman named James Dowdall, and he has opted to play as our original Eldar faction warlord and alternate art version of Eldorath Starbane. To the right, we happen to see none other than Alexander Cimadon himself. He's playing as the Chaos faction warlord Ku'gath Plaguefather. He happens to be holding our initiative token, and his opening deploy action is going to be a copy of the attachment, the unique Slaanesh's Temptation, put out into play at planet number 5. So each and every time we see an army unit deployed by James to anywhere apart from the planet where Slaanesh's Temptation happens to be attached, it's going to have its resource cost increased by 1. But James uses his first deploy to put into play a copy of Void Pirate to planet number 5 for a bit of an early game card boost, and curiously, we see Alexander's second deploy action is going to be putting a copy of the Heretic Inventor into play. It's got a cost of 1 with 1 command icon, 3 attack, 3 hit points, but the obvious pitfall of that unit is that your opponent gets to decide where exactly it is eventually deployed, and if you play that after a Slaanesh's Temptation, then there's no way to guarantee that it shows up at that same planet, and if you can play the Inventor first and then the Slaanesh's Temptation underneath it, that is a fantastic deterrent for a 1 attack value warlord such as Eldorath. But in any case, we see a 2 resource cost Void Pirate put out to planet number 4 opposite the Heretic Inventor played by James, and we also have to see a copy of Eldorath's signature army unit Starbane's Council now presiding upon planet number 1. So for 3 cost, it's a 3/3 with an associated command icon, and if it happens to be so fortunate as to be attacking an already exhausted unit, something that is likely to happen seeing as how, Alexander is holding our initiative token, he'll presumably get the opportunity to attack first. It'll attack for an additional 2 attack value for a grand total of 5. But we see a copy of Promotion now played out onto the Void Pirate at planet number 4, and we also happen to see a promotion affixed to the Heretic Inventor under Alexander's possession, also at planet number 4, so 3 and 3 break even. And just to further complicate matters, we've got a 1 cost, 1 command icon, 1/1 Splintered Path Acolyte at planet number 2, and a copy of Khorne Berserker at planet number 1, which happens to be exhausted because Eldorath Starbane and Ku'gath Plaguefather both show up at that planet. Note that our first 3 planets all happen to have red material type icons, so this could be a very quick game indeed. But planet number 1 is going to be 1 card, 1 resource to Eldorath Starbane, because exhausted units, of course, don't contribute their command icons to winning command struggles. Planet number 2 is going to be a card and a resource for Alexander. Planet number 4, nobody's going to win because 3 equals 3. Planet number 5 is going to be 1 lowly resource and 1 card won by the Void Pirate under James's control. So the initiative token does indeed happen to be in Alexander's possession. It's going to be up to Ku'gath Plaguefather to take an almighty swing of 1, and he does manage to successfully deal 1 point of damage out onto the Starbane's Council, but that Council could take a swing of 5, potentially killing off the Khorne Berserker. Even if it doesn't manage to do the job, Eldorath Starbane could nevertheless deal that killing blow. Looks as though it's going to swing for 5, directed toward Ku'gath Plaguefather. We see a Tzeentch's Firestorm 2 shield value card discarded to mitigate that damage down to a paltry 3, and now Ku'gath is going to have some ammunition to kind of toss back onto his opponent there. Ku'gath's specialty is to move 1 damage off of himself upon being declared an attacker onto an enemy unit present at that planet. So Eldorath takes a swing. That's going to be yet another point of damage upon Ku'gath Plaguefather. Looks as though both of our, well, no, actually neither of our enemies decide to stay, so James retreats with Eldorath and Starbane's Council. Very interesting indeed. And now it's going to be up to Cimadon to decide what exactly he wants to do with Karnath's battle ability, so he gets to trigger the battle ability of any other planet in play. Both of our players have a total of 4 units. And that means Taurus, planet number 2, isn't going to be able to generate him 3 additional resources or 3 cards. Iridial is the healing planet. Looks as though that's what Alexander decided to go with, so he's really no worse for wear in having survived that conflict. Ku'gath has no damage whatsoever. The Khorne Berserker is going to re-enter combat exhausted, but that Starbane's Council does happen to have 1 point of damage on it that it did not previously. Planet number 3, by the way, happens to be Barless, the random card discard planet. Slaanesh's Temptation is now upon planet number 4, Yavvarn. Very undesirable battle ability in most circumstances, though I believe as a player, Alexander Cimadon happens to have a fondness in his heart for triggering Yvarn's battle ability, putting cards like Black Legion Helldrake into play, and all kinds of nasty Chaos Demon elites. But in any case, our new 5th and final planet's going to be Elowith. If you happen to win a battle at that planet, you take a peek at the top 3 cards of your deck, take one of those cards, add that lucky bastard to your hand, and then put the remaining 2 on the bottom of your deck in the order of your choice. Note that James now holds our initiative token, and it's going to be all up to him. Each and every additional unit he plays is going to have its resource cost increased by 1, unless he happens to play it at Yvarn. And note, I guess that Starbane's Council last turn must have cost him a whopping 4 resources, so if he's not going to be sending his Warlord to the planet that has that Slaaneash's Temptation, he's not going to be able to generate a battle, and then he's going to be paying a premium for each and every one of these units. He puts a copy of the 4-cost Wild Rider Squadron into play at Yvarn, planet number 4, so it's a 3/4 with a command icon and a combat action where you can move it to an adjacent planet. So that kind of works in that he can move it away from the planet where he doesn't have to pay an excessive amount of resources for it. But Alexander Cimadon, of course, is able to put a copy of the Rogue Trader out to planet number 5. He doesn't have to pay any bonus when it comes to paying for his units, so Slaaneash's Temptation, it requires you invest 2 resources in it. It costs you a little bit of tempo, but I think it's already set his opposition back 2 resources, and it kind of confines where your opponent is going to be sending their Warlord, what they want to be doing with their units. Like, would that Wild Rider Squadron have been sent to planet number 4 had it not been for the presence of that Slaaneash's Temptation? I don't think so, because otherwise you'd be able to win, say a card at planet number 2, or a couple cards at planet number 5, or at the very least break even with potentially whatever Alexander was going to send to that planet. But both of our players are deciding where exactly they want to send their Warlords. What's very interesting is Eldorath is going to be discouraged from going to Yvarn, just because Alexander Cimadon could end up winning the game prior to any battle taking place at that planet. So Eldorath is going to go to planet number 4. He's going to try to get rid of that Slaaneash's Temptation by triggering a battle at that planet, but he's depositing that very expensive Starbane's Council at that planet, and there's no Planum on the board. There's no convenient means of relocating that unit. We haven't seen his signature mobility. Ku'gath instead goes to planet number 2, which could be his victory condition planet, and he drops off that copy of Khorne Berserker there to be ready, unless it gets exhausted by Eldorath. But in any case, planet number 1 is going to be a card and a resource for Alexander. Planet number 2 is going to be a card for Alexander. Planet number 3 is going to be nobody getting anything. Planet number 4 is going to be 1 massive resource for Eldorath, plus a card, thanks to the Void Pirate. And planet number 5 is going to be 2 cards and a resource for Ku'gath. So Ku'gath definitely coming ahead in regard to economy, and at planet number 1, looks as though that's going to be a Splintered Path Acolyte single-handedly winning that battle. That's going to be that planet captured, added to Cimadon's victory display. Note, ladies and gentlemen, that he has got 2 red material type icons, and he is now very reasonably set up to potentially win. I suppose we could see a combat action for the Wild Rider Squadron to relocate itself to Barlas. Then the following round it could show up to block off Cimadon, but our Eldorath player is going to have to hope and pray that he comes across something to stop this relentless chaotic onslaught. All the disease and pestilence. There hasn't even really been that much fighting so far, but, who knows? Maybe Cimadon will just sweepingly win this match. If it's not, I guess, okay. So looks as though the battle at Yvarn is going to be won, and we see a copy of Wild Rider Squadron put into play by Eldorath. Color me pretty surprised he actually triggered that ability, and that's no more than a mere Chaos Fanatics put into play in our Chaos players HQ. So that copy of Slaaneash's Temptation is now gone. The Wild Rider Squadron is going to be able to show up alongside Eldorath Starbane. I can only imagine a planet number 1, and now both of our players are going to want to stockpile as many units as is possible upon planet number 1, just to either try to win the game if your name is Alexander Cimadon, or otherwise prevent your opponent from doing so if you are instead James Dowdall. So note that Wild Rider Squadron has moved itself to planet number 2 so that it can opportunistically shift to our very relevant planet number 1. Our HQ phase comes and goes. That's going to be 2 cards and 4 resources for both of our players. New planet number 5, which I can only imagine is going to be entirely irrelevant, seeing as how, just brutal and fast this game has been so far, is going going to be a copy of Aatrox Prime. And what do you know, there's yet another copy of Slaanesh Temptation played out while Alexander is in possession of the initiative token. So that about blows. Eldorath went and, he put in so much work just to get rid of the Slaanesh Temptation. Now there is one in play again. Alexander still has something along the lines of 8 resources in total. We see a 3-cost Bloodied Reavers put into play at planet number 1. Note, Eldorath still has 4 resource tokens left. That Bloodied Reavers is going to be a 3-cost, 2 attack, 2 hit point, 1 command icon unit that gets a +2 attack value bonus when a warlord is present at that planet. Spoiler alert, I can only imagine that that's going to be happening in the form of Ku'gath and Eldorath both. But on Alexander's side, we see a copy of Promise of Glory. It costs nothing. It generates 2 cultist tokens. They can be subsequently sacrificed to put demon units into play at a reduced cost. Each token you sacrifice drops that cost by 1. We see yet another copy of the increased cost Bloodied Reavers. For the 2 resources he's paid as a premium, he could have purchased a 3rd copy, but that's going to be 2 4-value attackers. The Wild Rider Squadron is going to be able to shift in, and Eldorath is going to bring a Wild Rider Squadron with him, and of course all of this is on top of Eldorath being able to exhaust an enemy unit when he shows up. So even if Ku'gath shows up to this planet, we're going to need to see a hell of a lot more formidable combat units from Cimadon should he hope to be able to win this planet. And I would just hate to see Cimadon's early game momentum kind of brought to an abrupt halt here. But I guess let's see how things end up panning out. Our Eldar player only has 1 resource token remaining. He's put down his hand. I can only imagine that means he passes. Cimadon instead has put into play a copy of the Chaos Fanatics, currently residing at planet number 3, so he's going to match the 2 command icons of his opponent, so he's not going to presumably win any, cards or resources for himself, but he is going to at least presumably prevent Eldorath from winning a card and a resource. So both warlords show up at the first planet. Let's see how combat ends up being resolved, but planet number 1 looks as though it's going to be 2 command icons for our Eldar player and 1 command icon for Ku'gath. Note that the Incubus Warrior is going to get tapped out. I can only imagine, so that it's going to be depriving Alexander of that 1 card, and I guess the Khorne Berserker, maybe that's more daunting than the Incubus Warrior, perhaps not. Maybe it was just to shut off that card bonus, but in any case, planet number 2, that is actually going to be a whopping 3 cards won by our Eldar player, thanks to that Wild Rider Squadron making all the difference between those 2 promoted units on either side of the table. Planet number 3, both of our players are going to break even, and planet number 4 is going to be a total of 1 resource and 2 cards there to the right for Alexander. So Alexander's got 5 resources. What could we see? We could see Fetid Haze, we could see Warp Storm. I can't imagine we'll be seeing a Warp Storm yet, because those cultist tokens, a Chaos Fanatics, and a Splintered Path Acolyte are sitting at that planet, and Incubus Warrior also happens to be present. Those are all in danger of being outright obliterated by a Warp Storm. Ku'gath has the initiative token, but he doesn't have any damage upon his Khorne Berserker that has the Brutal keyword. He doesn't have any damage on his Warlord that specializes in shifting damage away from himself. So this is definitely an occasion where having the initiative token does not work at all to his advantage. The Khorne Berserker is going to be swinging for 2. We've yet to see the Wild Rider Squadron at planet number 2 move to planet number 1, and should Alexander Cimadon be unable to win this battle, he's going to have to reassess his victory condition and possibly plan for our current planet number 3. But I think that was a copy of Empower discarded as shields, so we see no damage successfully dealt out by that copy of Khorne Berserker. We see a Warp Storm discarded as shields, so that is going to be 3 points of damage dealt to the Khorne Berserker. It's at 1 hit point, it's at 5 attack value, but Eldorath Starbane is going to be able to use his paltry 1 attack value to potentially deal the killing blow to that unit, and that would just be a damn shame for that to be gone. But Ku'gath himself is a 1/7 unit that is doing very, very little. He takes, a swing of 1 at that Wild Rider Squadron, and we actually see that shielded. I think that's a copy of Promotion. It looks grayish enough to be a neutral event, and that's going to be 0 damage dealt out to the Wild Rider Squadron, so things are looking pretty grim here, considering we've got a 1/7 Warlord that has to take a swing. We've got a 4/2 Bloodied Reavers that has to take a swing. Things are going to be looking up for Alexander as soon as he's going to be able to ready some of his units, but that Wild Rider Squadron's going to be able to opportunistically shift over to this planet if James deems it is necessary to do so as well. So a lot of different options here afforded to our Eldar player, and Eldorath being able to pick and choose what kind of enemy unit to exhaust is just incredibly devastating. The Bloodied Reavers managed to kill off the 3 attack value, 1 hit point Incubus Warrior. They're not going to be able to swing back, and there was absolutely nothing that a Chaos faction player would have been able to do to prevent that destruction there. Even a copy of Plaguefather's banner discarded as shields would not have been able to do that. The Wild Rider Squadron shifts in. That's an Archon's Terror played by Alexander, and that is going to be Eldorath Starbane exhausted to nullify the Archon's Terror. So Alexander's still out the card, he's still out the 2 resources, and Nullify allows Eldorath to conveniently cancel that effect. That is going to be that Wild Rider Squadron, which is not routed thanks to the Archon's Terror being canceled, having the opportunity to deal the killing blow to that copy of the Khorne Berserker, and this is, I can only imagine, Alexander's victory at this planet being, stolen out from under him. I guess best case situation, he could play a Warp Storm after all of his units are killed. Maybe the Wild Rider Squadrons are sufficiently softened up that they too would be killed off by that effect, but I can only imagine that our Eldar player has several. Oh my god, so there we go. That is a Warp Storm right there, and that is going to be a lot of dead units on Cimadon's side of the table. I wonder if this was perhaps a little bit premature. But, in any case, I guess that's going to be both of those cultist tokens dead. That's going to be a Splintered Path Acolyte dead. That's going to be Chaos Fanatics dead. It's going to be potentially those copies of the Bloodied Reavers destroyed, and that's going to be 2 damage to each of those Wild Rider Squadrons. So it looks as though both of our players are indicating how exactly they want to be assigning their damage. I believe the players take turns based on initiative. Do you want to assign damage, shield it, or not? Going through the motions there. It looks as though we see 2 1-value shield cards discarded, and that means those Bloodied Reavers are going to survive. And like I indicated before, I think maybe Alexander was trying to prevent his opponent from being able to conveniently retreat from the planet, have some of those units kind of escape the possibilities here, but I also can't help but feel as though this was perhaps a little bit premature, just because if some of his units could have dealt out damage, softened up some of those enemy units, he could have actually killed them off with the likes of a Warp Storm. But then again, the balance, I'm sure what Alexander was thinking of in his mind was not wanting to allow those units too many opportunities to deal a bunch of damage to Ku'gath himself, just because if he ends up being bloodied, or you can't play the Warp Storm anymore because he's in jeopardy, that is absolutely horrific. But both copies of the Wild Rider Squadron took 2 points of damage. Ku'gath took 2 damage. We see Eldorath Starbane took 2 points of damage. One of the Bloodied Reavers, I guess we saw Gift of Isha discarded, so that would have been no damage dealt to it whatsoever, and thanks to another 1-copy shield card, that is just going to be 1 point of damage on the Bloodied Reavers there, and man, oh man, things were looking kind of close for Alexander, and then they started to look all the way bad, and now they are looking beyond that. This is like an 11 on the hopeless scale, as much as I hate to say it. So Eldar, man, look at all those units entering his HQ. That is absolutely absurd, and of course, prior to the end of the combat round, we see one of those Wild Rider Squadrons shift away from our old planet number 1 to our current planet number 1. Well, I guess Iridial just happened to be 1, but I'm not seeing a unit that had damage stripped off of it, unless, I guess it must have been that copy of Wild Rider Squadron currently sitting at planet number 1. So, that's a Tri-Con planet. It's a material, strong point, and technology icon. So, what could we see? We could see our Eldar player winning if he takes our current first planet, if he takes our current second planet. There's no new 5th planet. Planet number 4 still happens to have that Slaanesha's Temptation affixed to it, so Eldorath is still going to be paying a little bit of a premium for all of his units. I feel like I need a bit of a thesaurus here in regard to what an alternative way of saying premium is, but he's going to be paying that 1 bonus resource. It makes you feel good when you pay it, like you're really helping the economy of the warp in channeling all the additional income toward them. But in any case, we've got a copy of the now 3-cost Slith Mercenary put into play at planet number 3. It's going to be a 2-attack, 2-hit point, 2-command icon unit for the cost of 3. Your opponent can spend 2 resources to purchase that unit. We see another copy of Promise of Glory played out by Alexander. That's 2 additional free cultist tokens. And we see everybody's favorite unique lieutenant-type unit, Spirit Seer Arathal, touchdown on planet number 4. He's a 2/3 with 2 command icons, and as soon as he's, I believe, declared an attacker, you can pick a unit at his planet to strip a point of damage away from. We have to see Ku'gath's signature support, the Vile Laboratory, enter Cimadon's HQ. You basically pick a planet, and your opponent is forced to remove a non-vehicle unit from that planet. And I believe that is a deploy action specifically. So you could target the first planet, you could get that Void Pirate to be removed, or you could pick any other planet. Note that those Wild Rider squadrons are vehicles. They're not war gear eligible. So you could kind of screw with your opponent's command game, but the problem is I can only imagine that Eldorath is going to be either, well, I would presume Eldorath is going to be showing up at planet number 2 just because that's going to be our Chaos player's victory condition, and then if need be, at the end of the combat round, we could see that Wild Rider squadron from the HQ move to planet number 2 to planet number 1, just in case our Chaos player plays anything particularly nasty there. Or Eldorath could just bully the hell out of the first planet. He could get, a guaranteed victory at the first planet, then at the second planet. That could well work to win James the game here. Note, at planet number 3, we end up seeing the Slith Mercenary purchased, so James invested 3 resources in that unit, and for the cost of 2 and not a card, Cimadon ended up buying himself a 2-command icon unit, and not only was he able to just purchase that unit outright, but now, since he's got a rogue trader at that planet, he's going to be able to get that 2-card bonus and an additional resource thanks to the presence of his rogue trader. So, looks as though great minds think alike. James sends Eldorath to the second planet, and it looks as though Ku'gath as well shows up at the second planet. So I'm kind of curious in regard to what Cimadon's thoughts were by showing up there. I believe that copy of Starbane's Council was sitting there, and that's a pretty daunting adversary for Ku'gath to try to overcome, but since the initiative token happened to reside in our Eldar player's hand, I guess we could have maybe seen... Still, I mean, that Void Pirate could have attacked Ku'gath, then Ku'gath would have been able to attack, then the Starbane's Council would have been able to attack, and that just would have been very bad indeed, and the Wild Rider Squadron would have shown up. I guess Ku'gath is basically out of repetitive options at this point, but planet number 1, that's going to be a whopping 3 cards won by our James player there to the left. Wild Rider Squadron's going to threaten an attack of 3 on that Heretic Inventor. Planet number 2 is going to be a hands-down victory by Eldorath Starbane. 1 command icon beats... Well, 2 command icons beats 0. That's going to be a total of 1 card, 1 resource from Yvarn for him. The Heretic Inventor with its promotion is going to be outright killed. No shielding done at all. That Vile Laboratory is doing absolutely nothing. I believe its opportunity is past for it to do anything. And the Wild Rider Squadron uses a combat action to move from planet number 1 to planet number 2 prior to its being swept up into the HQ, and that is going to be Barless 1 by our Eldar faction player, and that's going to be a random card discarded. That's going to be a Vicious Bloodletter, so goodbye area effect 3, 5 cost, 4 attack, 4 hit point unit that I believe has 1 command icon, so good riddance to bad rubbish, I guess. And that's going to make it all the less likely that Cimadon's going to be able to surmount this tremendous, frickin' mountain of Eldar and Dark Eldar faction units here. So that's going to be a dead cultist token. Planet number 3, by the way, is going to be 2 cards and 1 resource for Alexander, but I'm not sure if it's going to be enough at this point. James won a card and a resource from his presence there at planet number 4. Spirit Seer Arathal doing the Lord's work, accruing all kinds of cards and resources, stealing them out from under Nurgle's nose, I guess. So maybe he's doing... I guess Isha's work, so good on him. And, combat is currently ongoing at planet number 1. Yvarn is on the line. I'd be curious to see if, I would imagine that our Eldar faction player is going to end up winning this battle. Alexander's got a complete dearth of resource tokens. He's got a paltry 1. That's not going to be enough for a Fetid Haze. It's not going to be enough for the Warp Storm that I just glimpsed in his hand. Looks as though Ku'gath uses a combat action to get the hell out of there before he ends up being absolutely obliterated. Starbane's Council is going going to deal 5 points of damage to the Chaos Fanatics. There's absolutely nothing in the Chaos player's deck that could have resisted firepower of that magnitude, Death Star style amounts of damage obliterating those Chaos cultists. I guess that's what you get for worshipping the ruinous powers. And at the end of the combat round, that cultist token retreats miraculously. Not often you see a 1/1 unit that shows up at combat exhausted manage to run away, and it's not actually very often that you see cultist tokens make it to the combat round in any case. But we see another HQ phase. I can only imagine that this is presumably going to be the last round of the game, but that's going to be 4 resources and 2 cards for both of our players. Ku'gath happens to be in possession of our initiative token, and I guess check this out. We've got a Void Pirate, what looks like in Eldorath's HQ. We've got a Cultist token in Ku'gath's HQ. That Wild Rider squadron sitting at planet number 2 needs to get readied, and the same, I will say, for that Void Pirate there in the HQ. But regardless, we form one massive pile of resource tokens for Eldorath, and note that that copy of Slaaneash's Temptation is just definitely, more than paying for itself. I guess I guess I can't do the mental mathematics on the fly, but I would say there have been at least 4 units put into play that have had to pay the extra resource incurred by Slaaneash's Temptation, but very exciting unit that we can see play. At least that's what I would be saying were it not for Eldorath's ability to show up at that planet and simply exhaust that copy of the Vicious Bloodletter, is it's an area effect 3 unit. Granted, it cost 5 resources. Looks as though Ku'gath got rid of one of his cultist tokens in order to help fund that Vicious Bloodletter. Maybe he'll end up having enough for a Warp Storm as well. Maybe Ku'gath will manage to find his way out of this mess he's finding himself in. An area effect 3 while you're holding the initiative token. Like, let's say if Eldorath were bloodied, wow, things could go so wrong for Eldorath. Like, the Starbane's Council could die, both of those bloodied Reavers, the Void Pirate, that frightening Void Pirate would be obliterated. And that Wild Rider squadron would be practically killed. But we've now got a Rogue Trader played out to planet number 3. Interesting choice there, but it could provide a bonus resource to fund things like Empower or Gift of Isha, all kinds of mid-combat tricks of that nature. We do happen to see the Vile Laboratory used at planet number 1, and that is going to be a Void Pirate shifting over to planet number 2. So that's going to be 2 command icons at planet number 2 for James, relative to the 3 command icons controlled by Cimadon. And now a Slith Mercenary messes up my mathematics. James is now looking to win at that planet, so he's going to be able to reel in a grand total of 3 cards, should he manage to win there. And once again, I speak a little bit too soon, or perhaps there's, lag on the video or something, even though that's not the case. But in any case, there is a promotion now affixed to that Rogue Trader. That's going to be a grand total of 5 command icons controlled by both players at that planet. Nobody's going to get any income whatsoever from planet number 2, and then planet number 3 is presumably going to be 1 card and 2 resources there for Eldorath. Planet number 1, I can only imagine that Ku'gath is going to show up at that planet, as will Eldorath and his little Void Pirate he has in tow, just because whoever wins this planet takes the game home. And it's looking pretty daunting for our Chaos faction player. That Vicious Bloodletter is going to be entirely exhausted, and now it's going to be up to all these 4 and 5 attack value units. What could they possibly do to destroy some of our Chaos faction players' present units? Turns out a whole hell of a lot is what they can do, but planet number 1 is indeed going to be 1 card, 1 resource for our Eldar faction player. Planet number 2, both of our players are going to break even, I believe. No, actually, I spoke incorrectly, so that's going to be 4 command icons versus 5. Cimadon is going to get 2 cards and 1 resource at planet number 1, and planet number 3 is going to be a card and 2 resources there for James. Ku'gath takes a swing, looks as though he's trying to kill off. Okay. I guess I'm not sure what exactly. Okay, so he used his reaction to put the point of damage onto the Bloodied Reavers to kill it, and then we saw some kind of 1 shield value card to mitigate the damage, to completely drop the damage dealt out by Ku'gath to 0. So the offense was ameliorated to such an extent that it was no transgression for James to bear at all. That's going to be the copy of the Starbane's Council, taking a swing for 5. What is its target going to be? It's going to be the Vicious Bloodletter. We see a copy of Slaaneish's Temptation, the third of such an attachment we've seen. That's going to be 5 minus 2 is, of course, 3 if you're following at home, my lovely audience. That means that the Vicious Bloodletter is just barely going to survive. Ku'gath and the Bloodletter are both exhausted. Ku'gath is not Zarather. There's no Infernal Gateway with which to drop units into play as a combat action, and therefore 2 resources means Warp Storm is not an option, Fetid Haze is not an option. What is an option is for those Bloodied Reavers to send the Vicious Bloodletters packing back to the Warp. So I can only imagine at this point, Nurgle is going to be profoundly disappointed in the greater demon Ku'gath Plaguefather because he's not going to be able to overcome the ancient, intelligent Eldar, but that's going to be the Wild Rider Squadron taking a swing of 3 at Ku'gath. 3 minus 1 is going to be 2 points of damage, so that Warp Storm is only good as a shield. The Wild Rider Squadron is going to move in. They're going to take a swing. Eldorath is going to take a swing. That's going to be a grand total of like 4 points of damage dealt out to Ku'gath. And it looks as though that's going to be the end of the combat round. I'm not sure if I lost track of how much damage was on Ku'gath or if I missed a shield card. I can see a Fetid Haze currently sitting in his discard pile as a shield. So Ku'gath was at 1 point of damage. He's now going to take a swing. He's going to move 1 point of damage off of him onto that Bloodied Reavers, and we see yet another card discarded as a shield. That's going to be Archon's Terror, but it matters not because that is GG, so good game. Very well played by both of our players. Congratulations to James Dowdall for managing to best the righteous Alexander Cimadon, but of course, very well played by both of our players, and thank you once again for Alexander allowing me the opportunity to commentate this game, to publish this match upon my channel, and of course the Nordic National Championships was a hell of an event. If you've not already taken the opportunity to peruse the very final match, Viktor Edstrom against Robert Austein, it is a hell of a match, and I strongly recommend you check it out. So unfortunately, Alexander did not end up being our Nordic champion, but then again, neither did James Dowdall. But in any case, I very much hope you enjoyed this video. Congratulations again to James, and thank you to Alexander. So, if you enjoyed this content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already, or if you are already subscribed, I always encourage you to share this content, because the more engagement these videos receive, the more likely new individuals are to stumble upon this content. They'll be exposed to Conquest, they may like what they see, they could give the game a try, end up buying into this LCG, and of course join our community, and all together we continue to send a message to Fantasy Flight Games to continue to support this fantastic card game. If at any point you'd like to get in touch with me, I would encourage you to do so through Facebook or on Twitter, and if you'd ever like to be akin to Alexander Cimadon and send me in footage of your own, whether it's a live-action tabletop game with an isometric camera perspective like you just watched, or if it's you recording your desktop with a program like Camtasia and sending in footage of Octagon, I would be absolutely honored to commentate and publish that match upon my channel. And of course, I'm always happy to advertise your favorite local gaming store or a local game club. If you ever feel so inclined to support the Hive Tyrant, I would be honored were you to make a donation to my Patreon page, as every dollar I receive is very much appreciated, and if that sounds like something you would be interested in doing, I would very much encourage you to investigate the possibilities there. But once again, thank you so much for watching, and as always, be sure to check back in again soon for much more Conquest LCG content to come.